Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Fluffy Biscuits Podcast. My name is Zach at Pixelated Trash, and I'm joined by my friend Jacob, co-host Nazir TL on YouTube. Say hello, Jacob.
Hello.
Today's episode is the wind-up to Halloween, and I decided that my presentation for today, my PowerPoint, is on the growth and the dominance of poorly made horror games during the 2010s. Primarily games that were made for YouTube purposes or made to be, introduce, like kind of jump scare simulators, basically. So we've got a big docket today of games I'm going to discuss that are in that vein, and then we've got some other games that are good that kind of came from that vein. So that's kind of the topic we're going for today. And now before we start, of course, Jacob, do you have any thoughts?
On the horror games?
Yes.
My only thought is not really having to do with that, but I think we should mention how we already tried to record this episode before.
Yes. Which actually plays into another part I wanted to talk about, because you'll notice that I look very different. Probably a lot better. Jacob doesn't have to kind of artificially blur my camera to make me look like I'm not streaming from a dungeon. But yeah, when we sat down to record this episode, we went going. We made it about 15 minutes in, and then my webcam just ceased to function. Now, it was a $13 webcam. So it was not a huge investment, but luckily I had some money, and my very, very kind girlfriend was willing to give me some leniency on my side of the bills this month, and I was able to order a new webcam for much more money that is not terrible. So hopefully this one will stick with us. Good old Logitech C920, I believe.
Yep, the gold standard of webcams for video stuff.
Yes, it's majestic, and you know, I a part of me wonders, of course, but I'm grateful for it. It's gonna be a game changer, lifesaver, you know, whatever they call it. But yeah, so new webcam, first step in upgrading things. I'm also gonna try to get a ring light. If you've watched the previous two podcasts and you know that Jacob's got quite the setup, I don't put that kind of money into my setup, really. So I've got some work to do to build it back up, but I'll get it going. So I don't recommend that webcam, by the way. I don't know the name of it. Probably should be a good idea to call it out anyway. I don't think that matters. But
if you just type in $13 webcam on YouTube for streaming, you'll probably find it. Yeah, exactly.
One of the top reviews for it said that what was it? It had, it was like an office guy who said they ordered like 100 of them when COVID started, and they've gone through like all of them because they have like a shelf life of like 6 weeks to 6 months before they just cease to function. So this is probably going to be better for us going forward. So I'm grateful for that, at least.
Yep.
So starting this topic, to kind of give some context, the main purpose I want to talk about is during the early 2010s, there was an explosion on YouTube of Amnesia: The Dark Descent, primarily, but also of a lot of horror games that were meant to be entertaining to watch, I guess is what I would say. Now, these games weren't obviously all made to be watched by playing by YouTubers, but as Amnesia became such a prominent game on YouTube, it really turned it into, they created a market where it was these indie developers or lesser known developers would kind of pump out these shovelware horror games that really had not much of a plot. They didn't have much of a setting or a story. A lot of times they were Russian or just dramatically not English speaking, like far removed from English speaking developers. And so they were usually poorly translated because they were obviously made on a very small budget. And so the first game, Amnesia: The Dark Descent, that I bring up is kind of where, in my mind, it started, where I mentioned in the first recording of this podcast that there's a few YouTubers I won't mention because they've since become problematic since their original popularity. But some of them, like Cinnamon Toast Ken and PewDiePie, and I mean, you could argue PewDiePie's problematic, but that's up to your discretion. But they have there's a big handful of these YouTubers that started. I think mainly Badass Hero might have started that way too, and maybe Manga Minx, and there's just a lot of them. And so Amnesia started this kind of concept of, we want to watch people be scared. Like on YouTube, you're playing a game, you're in the dark, maybe you have a webcam, that's usually kind of a selling point of that, and you're getting spooked and stuff. And I think YouTubers like John Wolf are a great example of, over time, you get very, very, not just like numb to it, but almost annoyed by it, where you can see everything that's happening before it even happens, because you've played so many of these. And the real basis for that to me is Amnesia, because Amnesia starts, all these YouTubers play it, then you get all the shovelware that comes out, and that's what I wanted to kind of talk about too. But first, do you have any thoughts on horror Let's Plays, Jacob?
Well, I think
or the
they
ones
really,
from back in the day.
They took off when I was pretty young, like still watching a bunch of gaming videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I still watch gaming videos, but I have swapped to enjoying like podcasts and vlogs more, but I'll still watch some of my favorite vloggers game. And going back to what you just asked, I distinctly remember watching someone play like the Slenderman game.
Yeah,
I watched maybe one or two videos on Amnesia. I didn't particularly like them in general. I thought that they were just one of those things that rose, like, it was new, so it got popular, is my way of thinking when I was young.
Yeah.
I think I was more annoyed that everyone started doing them, and then there was like no other content to consume, and then I think that might have been what led me to start reading more, which I appreciate, to be honest.
I feel that, yeah.
Yeah. I have since played Amnesia since then.
Were you a fan of it or not?
Well, we played it in like a group setting for a horror game night, so I think...
Were y'all able to beat it?
No.
Fair.
We were drunk and swapping who had the controller.
I can understand that.
It was fun, but it wasn't like I'm gonna go home, sit down, and play it fun, if that makes sense.
I get that, and I think the interesting thing with Amnesia is Amnesia really started this horror trend of you can't fight back. If you look at horror, a lot of it, man, up from like even Sweet Home, which came out on the NES, it's considered like one of the first survival horror games. You have a weapon. It's almost like a JRPG in the combat. And you see that get dragged throughout most game development as it goes. Now, you get plenty of people that try to offshoot it, From Software made the Echo Night Beyond, which is more of like a run and hide kind of horror game series. And, but generally, what you're getting is, you're getting Silent Hill, you're getting Resident Evil, you're getting Parasite Eve, you're getting Galarians, you're getting the fucking weird Martian game that everybody hated. Every time I think of it, I want to say the John Carpenter movie Ghosts of Mars, but that is not what it's called. But you basically had all these games of being like competent, vaguely military person fighting against these scary, and there was plenty of scary moments. Like I remember being very scared by Resident Evil 1 and Silent Hill and all them as a kid when I was playing them growing up. So I there is definitely a level of horror there, but there's something a lot more, I think, visceral about the Amnesia style of you have no weapon, you cannot do anything. If you see the monster, you are fucked, basically. Like if it sees you before you see it, you're done. And with that, I think that actually plays in. You were talking about Slender Man earlier, and I think that really plays in with the beginning of the Unity craze, the problems with it, because that's when you see all these people that are like, oh, I don't really have to put combat or even usable items in my game. All I need is scary setting, scary monster, throw it up on fucking, IndieDB at the time, I guess, for like free. And then it's just like people played it on YouTube, they got spooked by it. And what actually inspired me to talk about this for this is because I had read that Slender the Arrival is getting a remaster. That was the sequel to Slender the 8 Pages. And it's getting a sequel itself called Slender the Lost Chapters. I read about that back in like June or August, or July or August, I mean. And I think that's interesting because I think that we have come very far from that style of horror. I mean, Slender the Arrival was not in like a good game by most people's standards. It got a lot of bad reviews. A lot of people got frustrated with it. It's like, it's not an overall good game. And I think that it did catch on because of its ability to be played on YouTube.
Yeah.
Of course, Slender the 8 Pages started that, but Slender the Arrival, and in fact, Slender the Arrival has a chapter that's literally just a remake of Slender the 8 Pages. I don't remember where in the game it is. I didn't put that in my notes, but it does have Slender the 8 Pages remade in the original Slender the Arrival. And I don't know. It's interesting to me to look at because there were so many bad horror games that we will look back on and be like, yeah, I watched blah, blah, blah play that. That was fun, or blah, blah, blah play that. And in my research for this, I went back and watched some people who still have their stuff up, watched some old Amnesia playthroughs, and I watched a couple Slender playthroughs. I watched a couple of original like Five Nights at Freddy's playthrough when it came out. And there is a cultural moment, I think, with these kind of games where they hit and everyone goes berserk for them in terms of wanting to see people play them. But no one is really... I mean, obviously, Five Nights at Freddy's a little different. They've created a whole game universe out of that.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the majority of these. It's like when you make a game that's nothing but you wandering around an abandoned space station being chased by a singular monster and you can't do anything but hide and then you have to reach the exit. It's like, who's going to spend $5-10 on Steam for that? Not very many people, but a lot of people are going to run to watch a YouTuber play it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think that's really interesting to me because you don't see that with a lot of games, right? Like Starfield just came out and I don't have it. I don't have anything to play it on right now. I mean, I guess my computer, but when you look at it, no one really was like, oh, I can't wait to I can't wait to see, this streamer or this YouTuber play Starfield, generally. Yeah. It's like, people are like, oh, I can't wait to play Starfield, or I can't wait to get my hands on Starfield. But these games literally marketed to almost the audience of their audience. So their audience was YouTubers who wanted to buy the game to play it and, get that sweet, sweet ad revenue in from all the people that want to see them spooked.
I would like to interject here.
Sorry, yes. Sorry.
So, horror games and horror movies, I feel like, are better as a group experience. For people like me, I can play horror games and not get terrified or scared at all. It doesn't matter what the horror game is, right? The only thing that can get me in a horror game is when I am, like, my character or whoever I'm playing is running, and I know if I turn back, I'm going to die because it's right behind me.
Okay, yes.
It's the only thing.
I hate being chased, yes.
But, for instance, right, I played all of the Voidness, which is exactly what you're describing, but it is unique in its own way. I think that's a really good game. I think Outlast is unique as well. Although those are in that genre, I think the reason why they did so well on YouTube is not because the games are so good, but probably because everyone just likes to see other people get scared, or like, how are they going to react at this part, or when is this going to happen? And I would almost venture to say that most people that buy the game aren't buying it for themselves, but buying it to subject their friends who don't know about it to.
And I think that's actually really correct, actually, because I can safely say that I have never bought a horror game that I didn't intend to play on YouTube or on like my consoles with a girlfriend or a friend or something. So I definitely get that. I've never sat down and been like, oh, like this horror game looks so good, I'm gonna buy it and play it for hours. You know, I have right now 43 hours into Hogwarts Legacy. and I can't imagine putting that kind of time into anything that's just constant horror and jump scares. You know what I mean?
I understand.
And so I think that plays well, because that's the point of the games, is they're not supposed to be like these long collectible driven or challenge driven like quests. They're meant to be like a quick, very dopamine, very adrenaline building. Yeah. And so it's like you turn it on, you get spooked, you play for a few hours, put it down. And I think that style works really good in groups, like you're saying.
Yeah. Like another thing I would say, I would argue that because I've played horror games and I have watched horror movies ever since I was like way too young, I guess, to watch them. Like,
oh, same.
And I think a lot of people do that. I think they become desensitized to it. So it's more enjoyable to watch someone else get chased and how they react to it that isn't big into horror than to actually do it yourself. And also, I could be playing any other game. Like, I could be playing like Tarkov. And in Tarkov, I spend like all of my time like ratting it out. So just like, I'm not going to run into a combat that I don't need to take in that game.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I crouch in a bush and hide. And I've been on late night calls with some of my friends, and I'm just like, shut up, don't talk. I gotta listen. And it goes quiet for like a minute, and then they just hear me scream like a little girl because I thought I was safe. I peek up and I immediately get unloaded into. That.
Yeah, no, I feel
terrifying.
that. And that's the thing, is like, we should preface now, I guess, we're not just discussing the concept of horror games. We're discussing a very specific type of game that became very prominent during kind of my time watching YouTube and stuff. And I think that one of the best examples I found of this, and unfortunately, I'd love to give you guys some background. While I have it on Steam and I could install it, I think it is no longer available in the Steam store, and I can't find anything about it. I have an old privated video where I played it for a Halloween special like 6 years ago, but there's this game called Houston, We Have a Problem. And it came out, I believe, somewhere between 2014 and 2016. And it is a Russian game, I believe, again. I have no way of checking any of this. I have done so much Googling. I mean, at this point, I'm on the Steam community page that's still up. That's basically how I'm getting any kind of information. So I think this was such a great example, this Houston We Have a Problem, because it was so much nothing, but it encapsulated kind of the entire concept of what these games were and how shovelware they essentially are. It was a game where you spawned on the moon. You were an astronaut. You're in an astronaut outfit or a spacesuit and an astronaut uniform. No, but you were in a spacesuit, and the game was literally just this walkathon where occasionally spooky things would happen, and you found notes that were like supposed to be telling you a scary story, but it was so poorly translated you could barely understand half of it. And obviously I'm not downing people that just don't speak English. I'm just saying that if you're going to release a game, right, in English, and you're going to try to say, you know, you got to put, and if you're going to put a price tag on it, you got to do it right. That's all I'm saying. If it's free, I don't give a shit. But this one wasn't, and I vividly remember that. But it's exactly what we're talking about, where it's this it's so nothing. It's just nothing. There's nothing to it. It's just you spawn, you walk, you find notes, you die. And what all of these games miss is like the intricacies of a game like Amnesia, where you don't have this great world of lore that you're looking at. You don't have all this what would you call it? You don't have all this in-depth background that you can invest into and you can see and you can experience. And so it's like, as you're Daniel in Amnesia and as you're moving through, you discover all the things about the castle, you discover all these things. And so beyond just being this walking jump scare simulator, you have this fully fleshed out story that you can experience and that is of value, basically. Yeah. Whereas I think that's what a lot of these missed, especially games like Slender and Houston, We Have a Problem. And then all the other Slender Tubbies was one. What were some of the other ones? There was like one where it took place in like the winter and it was the exact same goddamn thing. And that's all of them, really. It's like they're so nothing and they're just dull as dishwater.
I do know that I think Outlast may have come out in the same time frame.
Little later, but close.
Same genre.
Close,
though.
Yeah.
That has actually evolved because now there's literally this year there's like a $30 game that you can get called Outlast Trials, and you can play it with your friends.
Co-op, yeah.
I think that's really unique. I also thought the story of Outlast was pretty good.
I think that too. I think the second one wasn't quite as strong as the first one. The second Outlast, which takes place kind of in like a rural town. I beat that overnight with a friend. I don't think that one was as strong, but with the trials and all that, I think that they are moving to a thing where I think they're moving more to like wanting to keep people consistently playing it. I think that's the big thing with horror games.
I think they made a nice pivot to like a Dead by Daylight sort of game, which I like. Those games are always really good. I feel like another Dead by Daylight, like with a whole all new revamped graphics, should come out, something like that.
Yeah, I've never really played Dead by Daylight. I own it on PC and PS4, but I've played maybe 10 matches of it total. But I think you're right that that's like a really good way to pivot to if you want to keep people involved. Now, obviously, if you just want to make a great horror game with a good story and you throw that out there and then just kind of leave it, well, there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? It's like, but you're not going to retain players the same way because in general, a walking simulator or a horror game like that is just not something that I think people are going to continuously go back to. You know, whenever you see somebody talking about what's a game you always go back to, or like what's one of your all-time favorite games, it's like some people will say like Resident Evil, some people will say like Silent Hill, that kind of stuff, but nobody really ever says like Five Nights at Freddy's. Nobody ever says like Visage. You know what I mean? It's
like, I feel like you're calling out a big vocal community that you just don't see.
No, I mean, I get that. No, I'm saying obviously Five Nights at Freddy's has a huge niche, community is the word, I guess, but it's got a huge niche circle of people that are very invested in all this story, that are very invested, but even then, they're not necessarily playing the game. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, they like the lore.
Yeah, and like if you play each game and you get as much lore as you want, now I'm sure there's people out there that have played all of the Five Nights at Freddy's for 100 hours each, and that's totally chill. If that's what you're doing, you're trying to learn as much as you can, find the lore, that's awesome. But it's just not generally the norm to like have these kind of horror games or these like really intense horror games that are kind of constantly returned to. And I think that it's interesting because, you know, Frictional, who make Amnesia, they made a sequel called A Machine for Pigs. We talked about that during our failed recording. So I'll kind of glossed over it, but basically it was made by a company called the Chinese Room, who ironically, for those interested, are currently they're the new developer making Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, which I'm very excited for, but I don't trust the Chinese Room. I believe they might have also made a walking simulator on the I think they made everybody. Yeah, they did. They made Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, which is a walking simulator on the PS4. It was kind of almost a tech demo in the way that it played. But they made a sequel to Amnesia called A Machine for Pigs, Frictional did, where they outsourced it to the Chinese Room. And it didn't get much fanfare. It was not very well received. And they came back in 2020, and released Amnesia Rebirth, which was meant to be the first true sequel to Amnesia The Dark Descent. And then just in June of this year, they've made Amnesia The Bunker, which is the second sequel to a direct sequel to Amnesia The Dark Descent. And I think that when you have that, you have to keep that, you have to build the lore. You know what I mean? That's kind of the way you market these horror games, is you have to build this world where everything's just a little interconnected. And I think that, I forget his name. Let me see if I have it in my notes. I do. Scott Cawthon, who made Five Nights at Freddy's. I think that he really put his all into, I wouldn't be shocked, and I've never seen any interviews, I don't know how he does it, but I wouldn't be shocked if he came up with everything before he ever even made a game. You know what I mean? With just the way that all the lore is interconnected and stuff. I think that definitely helps keep your game relevant. And the more people are talking about it, the more people are going to try it out, the more people are going to look it up, and they're going to experience it, and they're going to see what they want to see. And I've fallen down that rabbit hole. I've watched Wendigoon's 3-hour video breaking down the Five Nights at Freddy's lore, or the time frame or whatever it is he did. And I like that stuff a lot. I just think that when you're talking about retaining a player in terms of someone who's actually playing the game, that is difficult with these walking simulator horror games.
I would like to add something to this and then pivot, because it's been about 20 minutes of horror game. I would like to say one thing that happened last year that really got me excited for horror games again, and this leads into my pivot, is solely the fact that Silent Hill came back, and they're like, we're making new games. We're going to remake Silent Hill 2. We got Silent Hill Townfall. We got Silent Hill F. We got Silent Hill Ascension. We got all this stuff, and like, I'm just hyped for it. That's all I got to say on that. But leading from that to something else, there was a manga that I had found when I was younger, and you can call it horror or you can not. It's really whatever you want to label it as. I'm not exactly sure. Is it horror? It's more like a psychological thing, but it's called The Flowers of Evil. And I chose it because I thought it was funny when I read it. It's basically about this kid that's like a massive pervert, but it is like a psychological thriller, and it's about how this kid who's like really normal finds the book called The Flowers of Evil, and he starts to act out, and then he gets with like a couple of girls and acts out. But I have that, but it's written by one of my favorite manga authors called Shuzo Oshimi. And since reading this when I was younger, I'll hold it up to the camera. Since reading this book or this manga when I was younger, I went and found all the other manga that he has written over the years, and I found out that I had unintentionally read some, and I had also liked them because I just didn't look at who wrote them. One of those would be
one that I know called Happiness.
Yeah, I was literally about to say that. I think the second one I read was Happiness, but one that I'm still reading because I don't think it's fully completed is Chi no Wadachi, which is like Blood on the Tracks. It has to do with basically a kid whose mom is overprotective, and he thought it was normal all of his life until he finds out that she's crazy. And that it's not really a spoiler, because if you're gonna go read it, you'll probably know that she's just crazy. I won't go into further detail. I thought that's a really good one. On the status, it says it actually finished this month. It says it finished September 8th. Because I'm on the
that's what I was going to say. That I just found a thing saying it wrapped up in September. So
I probably have a few more chapters of that to read. But the hard pivot comes here, right? Because we all know if you want horror manga, you want like Junji Ito and stuff like that. There are countless other good authors. I think a lot of manga has great things to say about it. I think they all have, like, all authors have their strong suits and they all play to them. But manga, when you buy it in America, could be like $8 to $10, and that's not that bad. And I think it really depends on what book you get. Like if you get one of the bigger orange books or like an omnibus, it might be like $20. If you get like a limited edition, it might be more. But for instance, this one right here was like $8 to $10, somewhere in there. And
this would be a great moment for us if we could see each other.
It would be. Right here on the back, it literally says like $11. So it interests me because when I got this, after I had read it online, I was like, damn, it actually feels nice. Like the cover has like a matte texture that other books don't have. And a lot of manga they play on the texture, but I couldn't find the English version. I have a My Hero Academia manga here. I have an English version of it that is also like a very similar cover to this one, but slightly different. But I have one in Japanese. I have a Japanese one. The first thing I would like to note that even though I got this from Japan, it was like $5 max. I think it was like $4.50. And it has like a plastic sleeve over it. And I was like, what's going on here? And also it has like a really unique metallic cover under it. And this isn't like a special edition or anything that I know of. It was just how they sent it. And I was almost like, I think where this is leading is I want to start learning multiple languages. Like I want to learn different Asian languages and different like I want to learn Spanish, I want to learn Norwegian, stuff like that. But the whole reason I bring this up is because I feel like having a hobby, we'll use manga for this, is a good way to get yourself to progress in different areas of your life. For me, learning how to read a different language, Japanese, having that hobby of, from a different country manga, being able to buy a bunch of manga that's very cheap in a different language to have a bunch of like reading material is very cool. And with that, I think I want to know your opinion on something. Okay. What is your opinion on New Year's resolutions?
Well, let me backtrack a bit because I was gonna say, and then I'll address that. Okay. I agree with what you're saying. I actually did the same thing when I was learning Russian. I bought some Ukrainian, and now I did not know if they were different languages, to clarify at the time. I did not know if Ukrainian and Russian were like different dialects, but
I learned something new right now.
But I got a couple Ukrainian and a couple Russian books written in Cyrillic so that I could read through them and learn how to do that. And what I think too, in addition to that, is music. Music is great for that. If you can find a band in a language that you want to learn and you really like their music, it's a really easy and good way to be able to kind of digest it and develop your comprehension of the language, because you can either read like the lyrics written out, or you can read like the translated lyrics and compare. And I've always thought that that's a really good way to kind of familiarize yourself with a language. Whereas I know a lot of people say like movies, but I think that when you're doing something like a movie or a TV show, if it gets too hectic, right, it can really start to kind of bog down your comprehension if you're not like proficient in it. So it's like, I think music is really good, and like you said, books are really good.
Video games too, like Dragon Quest, like Japanese video games, or a Spanish video game if you're learning Spanish. Anything that's interactive could help you remember it.
And it's cool too on that front because like most games will let you put it in a lot of different languages. So like it doesn't have to even be, if you say you're trying to learn French, or you're like into learning French, then like you could take fucking Mass Effect, you know what I mean? And it's not a French game, but you could put it into French. It might be, isn't it? No, that's BioWare, never mind. But it's like you could put it into French and just experience it like that. I just think that what I hear a lot is movies, and I just think that's like the one thing that it's like you don't control the flow, right? Like when you're listening to music, you're picking the kind of music you want to listen to. You're picking how fast it's going to be, what, like all that, whether it's screaming or rapping or singing or whatever. And when you're reading a manga or a book, you're picking the flow. Whereas if you're watching a movie, you could be following along pretty good, and then all of a sudden 5 people are having a conversation and you don't know what's going on anymore. So, or at least that's for me. That's what like discombobulates me with that kind of stuff. But on the topic of New Year's resolutions, I think New Year's resolutions are a great way to try to tell yourself to do something. I don't think that anyone is more likely to do something because it's a New Year's resolution.
I agree.
I think New Year's resolutions are a good way to set a goal for yourself, but I don't think that anyone who isn't already going to do something eventually would do it because of a New Year's resolution.
I agree. The reason why I ask is because both of us had a birthday recently, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm the big 3-0 now.
So you're the big 3-0. I'm the big 2-5. I unintentionally had the habit of when I grew up, I think I started, instead of doing like New Year's resolutions, I did it on like my birthday.
I feel that.
So I was just wondering, like, I'll say some of mine, but going into the next section of your life, now that you're the big 3-0, is there anything that you want to change or work on?
I mean, without like some kind of weird trauma dump moment,
Well, yeah.
if I had to pick something right now that like I don't want to still be doing in a year, it'd definitely be smoking. But I say that every year since I started smoking. So,
like, any skills you want to pick up on?
What?
Any skills?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely want to continue. I want to get better at music production. I want to get better at audio production in general. Get some more skills to work with the limited resources I have. Because I think that's easy when you've got a big enough skill set, you can work with less, and I think that's important.
I agree. I think I'm a firm believer in, if you're gonna do something, like, you shouldn't be telling everyone that you're gonna do it. So I'm not gonna say everything I'm trying to accomplish here, because I feel like when you talk about it too much, you almost you psych yourself out of doing it. You get bored of the idea of doing it. So just learning multiple languages and getting better at videos, stuff like that.
I can feel that. So what brought on the discussion of the Halloween year's resolution?
What brought it on is... Wait, repeat that? I think you got a little choppy. It's fine.
I was joking, but I said, what brought on your Halloween year resolution?
Well, it started on my birthday, but I hadn't talked about it since then, or I hadn't talked about it to anyone until then. And
now you're all hearing it live.
Yeah, like, I had bought this manga like a few years ago with the intention of starting to learn the language. Because I don't like having to wait for translations. So I feel like it'd be cool. And also just unique to have a bunch of books in different languages. People be like, it's a good conversation starter if you have someone over. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel that.
A nice challenge. There's no real reason. I was just almost curious as to how you thought about it.
Yeah, I think that it's good to just set goals in general. And I think that there's obviously a lot of people that are more, I guess, free form. And then there's a lot of people that work better with like a set plan. And I think that personally, I work better and I see more value in setting goals, even if they're not currently attainable, because it's like, it gives you almost like a completion percentage in a video game, where you can be like, okay, well, I've got this done and this done and this done, and there might be 20 other things, but you can at least know that you like did something, you made progress. And I think that that's, when I got back on my Ritalin, it was really important to me to work a lot more, take more hours. And I drive Uber, so it's like self-employment. Obviously, I don't have to like ask somebody for hours, but
Yeah.
I was working maybe 15, 20 hours a week, and now I'm working right around 35 hours a week. And, you know, it's just a huge difference, but even right when I got my Ritalin, I wasn't immediately working better because I wasn't really pushing myself to work better. I kind of went into it with this concept that I'm going to take the pills, they're ADHD pills, I'm going to be stimulated, so I'm going to want to go out and work. But that wasn't necessarily the case. It was more of like I was hyperfixated. So it's like I would hyperfixate on things, but that wouldn't necessarily be what I needed to do or what my best option was, I guess. Where it's like I would just sit there and play a video game for 9 straight hours and just be like, oh shit, I gotta eat. And so it's like, you gotta set goals. And so it's like, that's what I do to get through all that and like to make myself work and stuff. It's like, I've got bills, I've got mortgage, I got rent, all that, or not rent, I've got utilities, all that stuff. And those are one goal. But then it's like beyond that, to not just work the bare minimum to get to that's not a goal, it's a responsibility, right? And so with bills and stuff, taking so much money out, it's like, I have to set goals of like, well, I want this, and I would like to upgrade this on my computer, or buy this console, or upgrade my webcam, upgrade my lighting system, whatever. And so it's like, that's what keeps me going for work, is it's like, oh, I've earned 150 today, I'm good. But if I keep working a little bit longer and I get to 200, I'll be able to save back a good chunk to put towards the things I actually want, my actual goals.
Yes. Going like a little bit back when you said some people work better like freeform or with goals or whatever. I think because if we go based on a person could live like 100 years old, I read something the other day that said people that were like under this age would live to like 120 or something, and I'm like, that ain't for me, chief. But if you go on like the goal of, or not the goal, but the mindset that a person would live like 100 years, right? If they had nothing tragic happen in their lives.
Yeah.
You turn 25 and you're a quarter of the way through. So I think another reason why I decided to make goals is because I was working freeform, and while I was getting things done, I never felt motivated to get them done. Does that make sense?
No, I totally understand that, yeah.
So I figured if the first 25 years of my life was like childhood and then like teenagers, young adult, and it was all freeform, doing whatever the fuck, I was like, maybe the second quarter of my life would be trying to organize everything, looking more at analytics, doing that sort of stuff. And I think to an extent it is actually really improved day-to-day life. Like health-wise, I got a Fitbit. I know exactly how many, like what my heart rate is, how long I sleep, how good the sleep is, how many calories I burn throughout the day, how many steps. Like all that goes into account at the end of the day. When I look over it, I'm like, okay, I drank this much water, I felt this well, and I can like adjust to see how well I'm feeling. For YouTube, it's like, okay, I posted this video, it had this sort of content in it, it was this format, it did this well. If I take what did well from this video, I can recreate it with maybe a different subject and, find where you're at. And I felt like that was very interesting. It's something different that I hadn't done before the summer.
And I definitely get that. See, it's funny because I obviously think that that's like a good way to go about it. But man, when it comes to things like YouTube and stuff, I am like the exact opposite. It's like if I had to tailor what I put on YouTube to just whatever fit the algorithm, I just probably wouldn't make YouTube. And I don't mean that as in like had to do that to succeed, because an argument that is how you succeed on YouTube, which isn't really my direct goal. It's more of I do this for fun. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like I want to have fun with it and stuff. And so for me, I totally get what you're saying and I don't disagree with it. But for me, if I woke up and was going to play Snatcher, for instance, and then I was like, well, the analytics haven't been good for this, but they've been good for this. So maybe if I make this and I cut this part out, and then it's like, that would just be so much. I would have to just be like, nah. It's like, I love being able to just make something that I am, and not even necessarily proud of, but that I am glad I made, and then I could put it out there. And that's just kind of all it is for me. I think my girlfriend was joking and was comparing us to Cox and Crindor, Jesse Cox and Wild Crindor, saying that you were far more Jesse Cox-ish, and I was far more in the Wild Crindor thing of that, where that's kind of how their dynamics always worked, where Jesse's been a much not a bigger YouTuber, but he's always made like a lot more like sponsored content, all that kind of stuff, and done all that. And Crindor's just kind of always been making like top 10 lists or like pointless top 10 lists and like WoW videos that he just wants to make and stuff.
I feel like,
but I think that's interesting though when you get the two together. I think that works pretty well.
Yeah, like I think to some extent for me they go hand in hand, right? Making content for YouTube or any sort of format, like right now it's pretty rough, right? You're still trying to find footing, whatever. But I think for me, content that I would be happy with is not necessarily, it's not what it's hard to explain. Because I could play a game that I know other people find boring to watch, like RimWorld, right? I love playing RimWorld. I agree it's not fun to watch. I don't want to put too much RimWorld on my channel, but I will put some of it on there. I would also, I would be more, it would be more in the realm to stream RimWorld than to put videos of it up, I think, because streaming is a whole different aspect. But for me, I think the content that would make me happy to put up is the content that would be the most entertaining to my viewers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I definitely get that. And I think that's, you see that with a lot of YouTubers nowadays. There's one massively popular YouTuber that I watch named Call Me Kevin. It's an Irish guy. He's he does exactly what you're talking about with, like, he clearly plays games he wants to play, but he gets so next level with like the cuts and the editing that it like keeps you visually engaged, where it's like he'll play RimWorld, but for what I can only imagine is like a 4-hour recording session for him, it's like the video is like 30 minutes long. You know what I mean? And so that I see, you know, you kind of, anytime you're making something like this, you either have to play the niche or you have to play the algorithm, and neither is a guaranteed success. And it's like, obviously, anybody watching, do not mistake that we're trying to talk like we have success, you know what I mean? Like we've figured it out or something, and anything like that.
We are fresh people.
Yes, freshly. This is my second go round of making YouTube stuff, but it's my first time trying to like actually edit it and make it like not just hit record on OBS, hit stop record on OBS, upload it. And but I think that you see a good balance with that, and that's kind of like I definitely tend to be more of the like, I want to show everything that I'm doing, which can sometimes be good, and it can sometimes lead to a lot of just me absentmindedly ranting as I walk around aimlessly in a game or something. And obviously Jake's my editor for YouTube, so he's well aware of like the things he's had to cut out and stuff, where it's just me screaming at walls because I don't know what I'm doing. But in general, that's why I tend to play games that are really kind of story focused, or more like I don't think I'd ever, I love sports games to death. I don't think I'd ever play a sports game on my YouTube.
For the most part, like, editing your videos is very entertaining to me, because we both have, just from watching it, I know both of us have two different styles. Because even when I'm editing it, like, you'll be like, cut this part, I think it was boring, and I'll watch it through and I'll be like, honestly, if you wanted to, you could have left it in. It's kind of funny. Like, I think Mazurna Falls, where you were just getting frustrated, and I made all the cuts. I made all the cuts of your slow downfall into madness. That was super hilarious. I feel like if I still had the footage, which I don't think I do, it would be really funny to make a bunch of YouTube shorts of you raging behind the scenes of that.
No, it was, and that's the thing is I think it's funny, and I think that there is definitely an audience for any type of content you want to make.
Yeah.
I think that's the value of making something on the internet where you're not necessarily policed by anybody. You're not like told. I mean, obviously there's things you can't put on YouTube, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You don't have somebody, maybe a producer of some kind or something, standing beside you being like, okay, well that wasn't funny, so you can't do that and you can't do any more of it. Where it's like, I can throw if I want to make a playthrough and I upload it to 1 view a day, I'll still play and beat the game. I don't care. That's not like the thing. And I think that offers a lot of freedom, honestly, where it's like, yeah, it's not necessarily working, but I'm having fun. So it's like the unforgettable failures of Fight Boy. The whole concept of that is I'm literally catching up on a fighting game backlog. That's basically all it is. And it's like, but I can make some kind of content out of it that I think is entertaining because I'm frankly very, very bad at fighting games. And so that's just that's my take on it, where there's a way for everybody to make something that they can be proud of. And I think that that's the best part of the internet in general. I'm not going to say YouTube, but just the internet in general, where there's so much you can do as a creative outlet.
There's a place for everything.
And it's like hell, even if your creative outlet is fucking Rule 34 Five Nights at Freddy's, there's people out there looking for that. And it's like, you could make literally anything you want, and at least one person's going to be like, you did good.
I would almost venture to say, earlier you said the algorithm and the niche aren't like, they don't work together in a unique way. I almost feel like, for instance, right, this isn't something I've done, it's something I've witnessed other people say. A lot of big streamers, I also have terrible ping in the Discord right now, in case I go like robotic for you.
Yeah, so do I for some reason, but
I believe like Ludwig and a dude named Squeaks, and there are a couple others. They were talking about how for Twitch, not YouTube, but for Twitch, they were playing all these games and they weren't really getting a ton of views. But then they played like Super Mario 64, the one with like all the paintings and stuff, and they immediately they started to pick up traction. And it's because not a lot of people apparently stream that, but the community is there for like the speed runs and all of that. So it's a very, from what I've heard, I haven't witnessed, from what I've heard, it's a very decent community that was able to like launch them. It was like their launching pad in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting, where you can find a niche that is big enough to give you a boost in viewership for like a different niche, if that makes sense, like a stepping stone.
Yeah, and I think that I've kind of experienced that myself on my YouTube. With my YouTube basically focuses on retro games, not super retro, like back to like PS3, Nintendo 3DS, and then back basically. But you know, I've played some games that are a little older that haven't seen much interaction, but a couple of them I've gotten where people have come up and been like, or left comments, been like, holy shit, I can't believe someone's playing this in 2023, or, you know, I didn't think people were still playing, you know, blah, blah, blah. And that's always good to see, because it's like, when you can hit a community and you are respectful to that community, and you put something out that, you know, that appeals to that community, that can be a really good way to just kind of, even if you don't find success off of it, it's a good way to kind of give yourself something beyond an echo chamber, basically, where if you're constantly making your own content and you're constantly not seeing people not react to it, then you really have nothing to work on outside of analytics. And analytics are great for the algorithm, that kind of stuff, but it doesn't necessarily tell you what people's thoughts are, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really helpful when you find those kinds of communities, or your content appeals to those kind of communities, because they'll come out and they'll be like, oh, I can't believe you play it, blah, blah, blah. But then, you know, they'll eventually be like, hey, by the way, your last like 5 videos, your like cuts have been really fucking weird. And it's like, oh, I was trying something new. I thought it was cool. But you know what I mean? Where you can get it starts to get, their community starts to become your community in a sense, and you can get a lot of experience and you can get a lot of information about what you are doing right and wrong in terms of people's take on it.
Constructive criticism. Yes,
that's the word for it. Well, I have some constructive criticism for you, Jacob.
Oh my God, no.
Wait. I think that maybe we might be hitting the end of the rope for this one. That's my constructive criticism.
We are. And I want to ask you one question about this week. What is your favorite meal that you've had this week? It doesn't matter what it was. It doesn't matter how big it was. It's just something that you ate that you enjoyed.
I went to, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's a Spanish word for kitchen. I believe it's La Cocina or something like that. It's like a hole-in-the-wall Mexican place, and it's freaking killer. It was like, all their mixed drinks are $5. Beer in the bottle is like $4 or $5. Beer on the draft is like, I don't think they actually have beer on the draft. But like all the soft drinks are like $2. You can get tamales, as many as you want, for like $3 each. The tacos are like $3 each. I got a plate of nachos that was so big, I ate it for lunch that day, for dinner that night, and then had it as a midnight snack to finish it off for like $10.
Yeah.
And so it's like, me and Mallory went, I got 2 Soul beers. I will edit that out. Sorry, everybody. But got 2 Soul beers, and then I got this big plate of shredded chicken nachos deluxe. And then I got, Mallory got 3 tamales, and she got 2 margaritas. And overall, it was like $30. So that was killer. And I will definitely be going back to that place more often.
All right. Well, I have something to add to that.
Go ahead.
Every weekend at D&D, we usually grab some food from somewhere. Normally it's cookout. Sometimes it's Sheets. And I would like to add that I made a Sheets burger, because you can like make it to whatever you want. That was phenomenal. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast. I thought
Sheets was a gas station.
It is, but it has food.
Oh, okay.
It has food that's like, it is really good, but it is kind of like more expensive than you would want to pay, honestly.
I feel that.
I was like, because the day before, it's not like an insane burger or anything, but the day before I was like, I'm gonna not eat as much today. I'm gonna get a Sheets burger, because a lot of calories, because you know it's trash food. It's that genre of food. I go in, make the burger. The burger, you can choose to have some interesting things. For instance, my go-to burger is a waffle as the bun. And it just has 2 burger patties and bacon. That is it. And it is the most delicious thing that I can get from Sheets. And then mozzarella sticks. That is the best thing I had this week. With that being said, would you like to lead us out?
I would. Thank you all so much for watching. Remember to subscribe to the podcast channel and like the video if you enjoyed it. You can also find us on Spotify at the Fluffy Biscuits Podcast. We will be, let's see. Yes, at the Fluffy Biscuits Podcast. Yes. You can find me again, Zach, it's at Commander GC on YouTube. It is not actually at Pixelated Trash. That's just the name of the channel. And you can find Jacob over at Nazir TL. That is the name of the channel. And I think that's good. I think I'm done. I think I said everything.
I think you're done.
Thank you to me for the theme song. Thank you to whoever else for the outro song. And yeah, we're good. We went over everything. And I hope if you don't listen to our Halloween episode, then I hope you have a wonderful Halloween. I hope it is filled with all of the shocks and frights that your little heart desires for this All Hallows Eve.
Alrighty. I just want to say, have a great day.
Bye, everybody.